Well, I think this is actually a very welcome development, to be very honest. This is one missing element in the entire security landscape, where you are not having locals to participate in the entire process. And as you know very clearly, that security is local. And of course, if you must have a solution that is sustainable and enduring, then you need to find local solutions to them. And for me, again, knowing fully well that most of the locals have native intelligence, they understand the terrain, they know the landscape, they understand the stakeholders, and of course, those who are perpetrators. It therefore becomes very strategic to also involve them in this whole conversation. But what is actually very worrisome is the issue that borders around profiling. How do you profile those you want to actually put on this entire nominal role? Because you need to indeed be able to determine that these are the people who would actually do the community guard rather than also helping to transmit information or becoming threats to the communities themselves. So profiling is very important to be able to determine the characters of those who support these onslaughts. Secondly, for me, the issue that borders around small arms and light weapons, the proliferation. What are the kind of control mechanisms that will be put in place to control the issue and the use of small arms in a manner that would also not threaten the society as we move on. And that for me is very strategic because if we do not pay attention to these two key elements, opportunities are there that what we think a solution might therefore become a new challenge and threat to the entire landscape. So I think these two strategic areas, there must be some level of internal and of course community buy-in into this whole process, develop a mechanism and a checklist to profile and do proper vetting. In security parlance, there is something that is called vetting, and vetting is actually required to be able to ensure that those who will be enlisted for this kind of non-operative cover, because it's actually a knock operations that these guys will be involved in, that they must also have clarity in terms of what their modus operandi must be like. And again, it is also an issue that borders around knowing fully well that these guys are going to do what is actually going to support the system rather than what will threaten the system. So these are, for me, some of the immediate worries that I have. But again, generally, I think this is actually welcome. It is strategic. It is expected. And I think it is something that we need to actually provide some support towards seeing it coming to reality.
As Salaudeen, you answered the questions I have not even asked because it was imperative to understand what the capacity would entail. It is a 50-50 scenario at the end of the day. It's a give or take. It's an effort, so it's commendable, like you said. But how effective has similar approach been in the Northeast against terrorist group, and other lessons that they might be learning from the application of this capacity building that they can replicate now that they're heading to the Northwest?
I didn't hear you quite well, but I think, again, if I get you correctly, you are talking about the kind of capacity development need that will help support those locals to be able to also do what is required.
Let me repeat the question. I'm talking about how effective, I'm asking now, how effective has similar approach been in the Northeast region against terrorist group, and what lessons might they have learned from the application of this capacity building for locals to combat bandits that they can apply in the Northwest?
Brilliant. Excellent. I think, that's a very beautiful template. Yeah, it's an excellent template that you have actually just referenced, because again, that was the only location in this country where we have initially, except after that, we also saw what happened to the Western Security Network in the Southwest, that is popularly called the Amotekun, and then of course in the Southeast, and of course some other states in the Northwest also had bought into the idea. So the template in the Northeast is similar to what we are probably seeing, involving locals to be part of the process, organizing them to also understand what security threat looks like, and then of course understanding the red lines, and there are red tapes that you need to also safeguard. Otherwise, you might be breaching some rights issues, particularly as regards the community. Because again, these guys do not understand what actually the limit should be. They don't understand proportionality, because that is very fundamental. They don't understand what it means to have procedure for detention or for interrogation. And then again, they must understand that whatever effort they are doing, they need to work very closely with security stakeholders to be able to achieve those purposes. And of course, they must understand that it is not about the use of force. So force is actually not what you must use, except where it is absolutely necessary. So these are some of the areas where they need to be capacitated to understand that there are also needs that will be helping them to support the actualization of this venture.
All right, since we have you here, I'll just ask your thoughts on this. Just yesterday, there were reports on abduction of healthcare workers and patients by gunmen in Kaduna. In your view, how can the military and security agencies improve their response time and effectiveness in addressing security threats in rural area? Because this could have been avoided.
To be very honest, I've been praying for this week to have some level of sanity, global template of mass atrocity, 9/11. So one of the things that I actually hope will not happen this week actually just came on the first day of the week, and that for me was heartrending. The terrorists were actually on their way to a secondary school, and they ended up in a medical facility. It took health workers and perhaps some patients who were in the hospital. What can the military do? One is actually improve on strategic communication. That terrain is actually a very difficult terrain. And I think, again, in our security conversation, there shouldn't be anything requiring or being referred to as a difficult terrain. Currently in Beniguari, it is very difficult for you to be able to speak to anybody because of the very poor communication infrastructure that we have in that particular location. And it took a lot while before security agencies are aware of what happened. And these guys actually came in at 9 a.m. in the morning, trying to also brandish the audacity of confronting every security stakeholder. So it tells very clearly that they understand the pattern and the working relationship and the way security actually responds to issues. And I think it is very important that we also find what are those elements of surprises. And what can they do is to improve the communication infrastructure in the hinterland, in hard-to-reach area. When we talk about ungoverned spaces, it tells very clearly why security threats thrive in those localities. It's simply put because there is nobody who will respond to any form of audacity. So that in itself is important. Communication. Two is actually to improve on how we gather intelligence. Of course, I mean, when you don't communicate effectively or don't have the infrastructure, intelligence gathering will be very difficult, because the issue would therefore be how do you sedate those intelligence once you gather them. And that for me is actually an issue
that in this day and age, we are still talking about effective communication. It is quite sad. Thank you very much, Salaudeen, for speaking with us.